Welcome into the Irish NFL show, folks. We are getting closer and closer to the NFL season. We are presented by Cassidy Travel, Ireland's #1 travel agents. Search Cassidy Travel online to get some great NFL deals, new NFL deals every week, or contact them for your own personalised NFL holiday this season and say that we sent you, that Brian sent you, the Irish NFL show sent you, the Cassidy Travel. A good group of lads. Thank you for your support, lads. NFL Game Pass. Check the link in the bio, folks, to sign up for free until the end of the month, and you get over 270 games, non-blackout games, non-Sky Sports games in Ireland and the UK. Check it out. Click the link. Appreciate your support. And if you're listening in the podcast, a warm welcome. Hello on YouTube or wherever you're watching. Michael McQuaid, Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary, Mark Cockerell as well. NFC East. Let's talk about the NFC East. Now, by my recollection, Colin, the team that won the NFC East last year was Brian's favourite team, the Philadelphia Eagles. So, Adrian,
No.
how are you feeling about this Eagles team this year, Colin? Because it's another step for Jalen Hurts, and I don't want to give my thoughts away on this division, but they seem to be going in the right direction.
They are going in the right direction, but they while they made the playoffs last year, they didn't win the division. They ended up the Cowboys won the division last year, but the Eagles came strong.
This is how much I'm biased against the Eagles. Let's just go to the Eagles, and we'll go with the Cowboys next.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Eagles had obviously an interesting year last year because they kind of limped into mid-November against the Broncos. And they were 3-6, and the defensive mastermind Vic Fangio kind of dared Jalen Hurts to beat him through the air, and he did. And from there, the Eagles went on a run, and they obviously made the playoffs. I mean, Hurts has got a lot of slander on this show, but he has through for I think almost 62% completion percentage last year. He threw 16 touchdowns. He ran for another 10. He has to prove that he is a franchise QB, but obviously the Eagles have done a great job, I think, of putting the pieces around him this year. AJ Brown, that's a fantastic move to have him on one side and Smith on the other. The O-line should be really strong again. To bring in Jordan Davis, to Hassan Reddick. I mean, one of the issues around them last year was they just didn't get to the opposing QBs enough. And they have looked to address that in the off season. For me, they are the favourites for this division.
Yeah, you talked about them not getting to the quarterback enough last year. One of the other things that concerned them was the secondary. They only had 12 interceptions in terms of takeaways. And that was a concern for them. I think they're trying to address that with similar scenario to Garoppolo. They waited till James Bradbury was inevitably released by the Giants because of the cap hell that they were left in, and they picked him up quickly. So to have him playing on the other side of Slay is it's really promising for them. Again, you took on Reddick. That's a big loss for for Carolina to see him come over to the Eagles again. They're stepping up, but it's all on Hurts this season. Like 61% passer rate last year. It's only threw 16 touchdowns. He ran in 10, but he still finds a way to bring a team to the playoffs. But it is to make or break year for him because, as you said, they put all the gifts around them, made a big trade on draft night. An interesting player they picked up was Zach Pascal from the Colts, wide receiver. I thought he was having a reasonably good start to his career in Indianapolis, and they moved on quickly from him, and they picked him up. And I think we spoke to James Palmer recently, and he was raving, and he said he's very underrated. Dallas Cowboys, the tight end. So yeah, they put a lot of players around them, and as you touched on, a lot of returning players, and defensively, they bring players back. Interesting player, Brandon Graham, injured all last year, was a big loss. And in terms of rushing the quarterback, he's back as well. So it all looks like it's going in the right direction for the Eagles. I know we're going to come to the Cowboys in a minute, but I would agree with Colin. I think I'm not going to say they're the favourites because they've done so much work in the offseason they have, and it's justified in terms of some people see it like that way. But I also think there's a reason behind it with the Cowboys in terms of the drop off with the Cowboys. And I know we're going to come to that in a minute, but that's why I would see the Eagles as the favourite because of other factors within the division.
Go back 12 months and the Philadelphia Eagles were not believed in their roster looked poor. Their roster looked poor except for tight end, and ironically, obviously, they traded Zach Ertz to the Cardinals as the year went on. So it's fair to say that what Nick Sirianni in year one has done has been impressive. Probably not still as impressive what Harry Roseman has done during the offseason, though. Columns alluded to the A.J. Brown trade. Addressing the positions of weakness seems to have been key, even though in the end they only drafted 5 players. So a lot's been done in terms of wheeling and dealing and trading as well. I'm not going to say the Eagles are the odds-on favourites for this division. I think, Colin alludes to the slander about Jalen Hurts. They got the last year in spite of Jalen Hurts, not because of him. They turned into Baltimore North. 160 yards per game, 25 touchdowns rushing, both leading the league in rushing. They leaned on the running game. There were times we were saying, why aren't they doing more of this? Why aren't they doing more of this? And that's obviously going to be, to me, the source of their success next season as well. So I don't think Jalen Hurts is the answer necessarily. I think he is the franchise quarterback for Philadelphia presently. He won't be next season. And I think this season is going to bear out his flaws, and they're going to get even more exposed. And he is the biggest flaw and weakness, in my mind, in this entire team.
Jalen Hurts led the league with 784 quarterback rush yards last season, and he's been developing his arm strength and also his accuracy over the off season. I'm excited to see what he's going to do.
He bloody needs to.
AJ Brown, and he's also got Devonta Smith as well. I don't know what, Colin, are you all right?
I'm laughing because I'm remembering back, and there was the Eagles were going to get beaten by the Lions. I'm remembering that last year, and these two lads were saying the exact same thing about Jalen Hurts then. And it's just, we're a year on. The guy, as Michael, you've been going through what he's doing, and it's very funny just to hear the lads saying the same thing.
Sorry, can I just say one thing?
Yeah,
sorry, Michael. Sorry, I want this one. Sorry, Michael, I don't mean to cut across you, Mark. No, Colin, I was talking about week 1 this year. The Lions are beating the Eagles in 2 weeks' time.
Okay. I'm just sort of, I guess, lucky. I can sort of sit now and watch a bit of tape and stuff. I like the offense. I think that Jalen Hurts has the ability this season to progress further and further cement himself as QB1 in Philadelphia. I'm excited to see what Sirianni is going to do this season, and I think by far this Eagles team is the most exciting in this division. Like, okay, I understand the Cowboys, but no, it's the Eagles for me at the minute. I'll talk more about the teams, but I like the Eagles. I think that they've improved the most out of all the teams in this division, and I think Howie Roseman's got a clear plan as GM, and Jalen Hurts is the quarterback for the long term in Philadelphia. You can screenshot that in 18 months' time if I'm wrong, but he's way better than the quarterback in Washington, and he's generations better than the quarterback in New York. Cowboys, Colin. How about them? How you feel?
So
Jerry Jones went in the ESPN column after one of their star players got injured. He sat on first take for an hour and a half instead of making calls, and the call he made, as of the time of recording, was Andrew Whitworth. So do you think they're in a good position heading into the season?
I think the Cowboys are in the position that Jerry Jones has put them in. And I think you're dealing with a franchise now who, while Jerry loves to go on TV and talk about how much they're worth, the Cowboys haven't, won a championship since 1995. You're talking about a generation, an entire generation of people have not seen the Cowboys win a championship. And you're saying, Michael, they've lost another O-line guy. They lost Amari Cooper. Collins moved on. Cedric Wilson, Randy Gregory. Dak is a guy who struggles when there's change. Dak can be a very good QB, struggles when there's change. And in the year of our Lord 2022, Jerry Jones also said on television that as Zeke goes, the Cowboys go. Jerry, it is not the 80s or the 90s. Football has moved on from running backs. It is absolutely ridiculous. Also, the guy you're pinning your entire franchise on has averaged 62 yards rushing over the last 2 years per game. 62 yards per game is what Zeke averages over the last 2 years, but he is going to lead them to glory.
Just wanted to throw some melts in. That generational quarterback who's miles better than Jones, generational quarterback, remember, had the 61% completion rate as opposed to Jones, who had a 64% completion rate last year. So, Jesus, just as well I'm not a stats man.
I didn't say he was generational quarterback. I said he's generational.
Generation's better than
Daniel Jones.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what
we'll
NFL
talk
you're
about
watching.
the Giants very soon.
I'm still in flux here. I'm not sure what to say. Cowboys. Cowboys have a lot of concerns for me, which is why I see the Eagles as favourites, because like Gallup is coming back from an injury, ACL. He was inconsistent at times, but he looks like he can be a star player. And they brought in James Washington from the Steelers, who was surprised that he moved on from there. They've given the franchise tag Dalton Schultz, but the offensive line is the problem now. Like, they're going to have to play Tyler Smith, the first round pick, and a lot of people felt that he wasn't even supposed to be a first round pick, and it was something for the long term. He's going to have to step in now. Terrence Steele is going to have to move to left tackle with the injury. Then they're going to have to go find the right tackle. It's too many unknowns for me. This team's taking a drop off from where they were last year. Dak Prescott is still the best quarterback in the division. So when you have Dak, he can be inconsistent on his days. He can be really impressive. So still feel we're well within their rights as a Cowboys fan to be thinking they can at least make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Cowboys offensive line, which allows me to bring up my favorite stat of the summer, which is Zach Martin has more Pro Bowl appearances than he has holding penalties during his entire NFL career so far. It's kind of like the my new favorite after the old Larry Fitzgerald had more tackles than drops type of statistic. So problem is drop off in many other places. The losses across the board, the losses, for example, for Gregory and aspects. It's a defense that will take a drop down. Now, do they have a transcendent talent on this team? Of course. His name is Micah Parsons. He had the Rookie of the Year campaign by a million miles. He is going to lead this defense probably for the next decade, because I can't see Jerry letting him out of his hands. And he can still be the material difference maker for these Cowboys. The reality is, as well, as Brian just alluded to, and I fully agree with this, they have by far the best quarterback in the entire division. Is he like Katy Perry? Can he blow hot sometimes and then cold others? Because he's hot, then he's cold. Yes, then he's no. Absolutely. How much is that to the quarterback? How much is that to Mike McCarthy and a very choppy offense at times during the entirety of last season? But unlike the aforementioned Jalen Hurts, who you have to read off his rushing stats to give him any credit to, Dak can throw the ball outside the numbers, he can throw it accurately down the field, and he can hit the seam route on a regular occurrence, none of which we can say about Mr. Hurts. Does that mean that the Cowboys are greater than the Philadelphia Eagles? Well, we'll round that up at the end, but they've definitely got a material advantage at quarterback.
God, it actually seems like 5 minutes ago whenever Dak Prescott was running for his life trying to get a snap. Do you remember that? Jeez, that was something to watch. 95, but that was the year Tyrone got robbed in the All-Ireland final. See, I keep being told about that because I was a 4-year-old child and I don't remember it. Very much like I've never remembered the Cowboys winning the Super Bowl. I'd love them to win the Super Bowl just to see Brian's face, because it's a bit like whenever the Chiefs won it a few years ago and I had to sit in the live stream and say, at the end of the day, the Cowboys win, it'll be great crack, but Jerry Jones is not going to see it, lads. It's not going to happen over the next few years anyway. Right, look, I don't want to start with the obvious point, but I'll leave it to the end. The elephant in the room, shall we say. Dan Quinn, what he done last year to take... it wasn't a great Cowboys defense. It wasn't fantastic, but to take him to the top 10 defense, it was fantastic. And Micah Parsons, what's his year 2 ceiling? How far can he improve? The problem that Dallas have is they've got a number of different issues. I don't feel like their wide receiver core is strong enough. Is Washington going to be that X factor for them, wide receiver? I just don't think he is, personally. Can they get enough? And Colin, you mentioned about Zeke. Do they use Zeke and Pollard as this like sort of hybrids? In, out. It's just, there's so many question marks, and Zeke's contract has financially screwed this team to a point where it's like, where do they go next year? I personally think they're going to struggle this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Sean Payton's in charge by Thanksgiving. or if he's not in charge by Thanksgiving, I wouldn't be surprised that he'll be in at the end of the year. But Jerry Jones seems like a sort of boy that will not be waiting around this year with Mike McCarthy. I'm honestly surprised that Mike McCarthy is still in a job in Dallas after the way last season ended. Randy Gregory's out as well. He's way over to Denver, so I'm happy enough with that. Let's see what happens. I think they're going to struggle. I don't want to give away my position yet, but it's a big year for Dak, as it always is. And unfortunately, it seems as if whenever the plays actually start and the talking stops, Dallas will, a bit like an Undertaker, let people down, I guess. There you go.
I think offensively, CeeDee Lamb is the X factor this year, or he's the most crucial player they have. It's not Zeke, it's CeeDee Lamb. He has to make a step up here because he's looked good in parts, and he arguably he could be one of the best wide receivers in the league. But with Cooper gone, I know Cooper's pass were dropping off, but it has to be Lamb to step up because I don't think Elliott is going to be the man to take them forward. And as Marcus alluded to, about Dak getting the ball down the field, that's only going to work if the stretch plays are available. And CeeDee Lamb ultimately is the guy that has to go down the field and make those plays. So for me, he's the key part of the team. And just on your point about Mike McCarthy, well, as Colin rightly called out a few weeks ago, Cowboys fans were reassured by Jerry saying that Mike McCarthy's here because I know he's the best coach for this team. But I think you're on the money there, Michael. No, I don't think during the season, but I certainly think if there's no playoff run, and I really mean a playoff run, like a deep playoff run, that he will be shown the door, and inevitably then Sean Payton will obviously make a drastic U-turn in terms of what he wants for his career this time.
If they were to hypothetically lose to the Bucs week 1 and lose to the Bengals week 2, could Mike McCarthy be fired if they lost to the Giants week 3? I'd be calling for his head.
No.
As a Cowboys.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
Well, because you look at the opponents and who they're playing week 1 and week 2, Michael. With all due respect, it's the one won a Super Bowl 2 years ago, and one has just been to a Super Bowl. So you could argue they're toss-up games in itself. The Giants, divisional games in the NFC East. We've talked. When's the last time a team won the NFC East 2 years in a row? Was it 15, 16 years ago? Those games are always competitive. Even if the Cowboys win by a field goal, those games are always competitive.
Yeah, I think it's 2004. Brian's last time team won it back-to-back years. It was the Philadelphia Eagles, remarkably enough, under Andy McNabb. I'm confusing Andy Reid with Donovan McNabb there. I was combining the two into the SAS. There you go. But the one thing I did want to flag is you both mentioned James Washington. Bear in mind, he did suffer an injury in preseason. So he's expected to miss the first part of the season, a number of games to kick off, which obviously joining a new team as well isn't ideal for them, especially not with that very tough start to the season, as you allude to.
We'll get to Adam Rank, lookalike on the New York Giants in a minute, but let's talk about the Washington. What are they called this week, Colin? The Commanders. They bring in Carson Wentz. Now look. Let's take this down a notch here. We were delighted to have Coach Rivera, on the show prior to Super Bowl LVI, and it was an honor to have Coach on. It's been an interesting off season, both on and off the field for this team, Colin. New uniforms, a new quarterback. Efe Obada's there now. Have you anything you'd like to add to this team? Because Carson Wentz, whenever I watched him in Indianapolis, it was like, oh, get ready. He's about to do something good, sort of situation. So what's the what's your thoughts on the Commanders? Could they command themselves into a position of power in the NFC East this year?
No. You said all the new stuff they had, and yes, it's true, but the turmoil, the chaos, the dysfunction that surrounds the ownership exists. Will his yacht come back to the States? Will he be on American soil to watch any of his team that he owns? Is he going to go and watch them this year? Or, he seems to have spent the summer in Europe, so he couldn't go to any of the congressional hearings that he had been asked to testify before. Look, you feel for Ron Rivera. All right, Ron Rivera, if Carson Wentz starts week 1, barring injury, he obviously will. That will be the 7th starting quarterback since 2020. That's Broncos-esque. That's what that is. And you're not going anywhere when you have that. But look, I don't know what the Commander is going to be like. They were much vaunted on defense last year, but the pass rush never materialized. Antonio Gibson, what is he going to be doing for the season? Will we see him selling stuff in the stands? Because Ron appears to, have no faith or belief in him whatsoever. The one good thing you can say is they got the deal done with Scary Terry, and he is scary good.
I say there's 4 or 5 teams in the league, genuinely, you have, I'm not going to say no clue how their season's going to go, but they're a toss-up, and this is one of them. Like 2 years ago, this defense. When we went into the last season, I believe we all picked this team to win the division, and we based it on the fact that their defense was so strong the previous year, and it never materialized. It kind of came together towards the back end of the season, and then when they went into Dallas, they got blown out, and all the players were killing each other on the sideline. There's been again talk of kind of discomfort in the team. So Colin was right. You talk about the ownership, and then you tend to say, but when you've got a really experienced head coach who's gone to a Super Bowl, he can step away from all that and he can focus on the team. But it has to be concerning the background. And then look, we've all expressed our concern with Carson Wentz. A few bright spots, like McKissick is a really good running back in his own way. He was going to go to Buffalo and he pulled out. Brian Robinson, the 3rd round pick, has been really explosive. The running back during camp and during the preseason games, which is probably a reason why he feels he can step away from Antonio Gibson. Chase Young is gone for the foreseeable. He's on IR and there's no confirmation to when he's coming back, which is a huge loss. And they have, like you touched on the defense, like they went the second round to a guy called Mateus, and he's an edge rusher, and straight away they're going to plug him in, so they're expecting big things from him. Montez Sweat's there, like they've got the players. Darren Payne had a really strong year 2 years ago. Linebacker is a position of need and concern. Like Holcomb and Jermaine Davis were inconsistent last year. There's too many question marks for me, so I couldn't put my hand in the heart and say they're going to have a good season, strong season. But will they win games? It's it feels like a bit of a 7-9 type team, maybe 6-10, that they'll win games that you don't expect, and then they'll get blown up with others. A couple of years ago, you'd be always saying that on week 1, Washington at home to Jacksonville is a gimme, and Washington would win. I think that feeling has changed, especially with what Jacksonville has done in the offseason, and I think a lot of people will be leaning towards Jacksonville in that game. But yet they're not favourites, so people still feel that Ron Rivera has that edge when it comes to coaching. And sometimes in football, it's not about the players on the field, it's about the coaching on the sideline that can get you over the line in games, which is why they might win the likes of games that you wouldn't expect. So I'm not sure how the season's going to go from genuinely, and I know a few Washington fans and they're the same.
Mark, I think back to when we were in LA, and myself and Brian ran into Efe Obada in Hogwarts in Universal Studios, and Brian was begging him to come to the Giants, and he went and joined the Commanders instead. I'm sorry, I had to put that in.
Begging is a bit strong.
You weren't begging, but you were trying to persuade him, and I remember he thought,
I'll make one more point on this. Sorry, Mark. If the general manager came from Buffalo and the head coach came from Buffalo, and Efe Obada is not in New York, I think that says it all.
Oh, tough, strong words, Brian. I mean, look, this is still the only division in football who all teams in the division have won the Super Bowl at some stage in their past. Still the only team. Every single team has won the Super Bowl. That's a nice positive. Another nice positive, if you're a Colts fan, like my friend Mike Lentz, he's based in Seattle, is a longtime Colts fan. His birthday is the 30th of October. And it's very appropriate this year because finally Carson Wentz will be throwing a ball to a Colts player accurately. He's going to be the gift that keeps on giving to the Colts. That piece of business, as I still say, smacks of the greatest degree of desperation from the Washington Commanders. And it's one of the nicest bits of business in a very impressive turn as GM that Ryan Grigson is doing at the Colts. It is very, very difficult to look for positives for the Commanders. Even though Brian's just listed, they've got a very talented roster. You haven't even mentioned Chase Young, who's got a legitimate run this year, maybe of being Defensive Player of the Year. When you think of, getting used to the league, getting used to its speed, hopefully getting over the injury concerns that blight the end of his season last year. But we come back to the pyramid. If anybody's heard our AFC East run through, our NFC West run through, I talk about the pyramid of ownership, GM, head coach. This is important. Ownership matters. It matters, and it's a big problem in Miami in terms of ownership, and it matters, and it's a big, humongous, cannot be overstated, gigantic, cataclysmic, Jupiter-sized problem in Washington. Ron Rivera is a great coach. I think he's proved that during his stints in multiple places, especially with the Panthers. He is able to coach and lead men. God knows the Washington season's last 2 years would have been even worse if it hadn't been for him there. But Daniel Snyder and the stench he is leaving over this franchise is getting unbearably close to getting to the stage of other owners almost putting pressure on him, on Goodell, to try to engineer a situation to change the ownership scheme in Washington. That is problem number one. The other problem is Carson Wentz. Those two things, more than anything, are destined to doom the Commanders during this season.
I'll keep it short. I'll keep it sweet. Well, I'll try. Carson Wentz, what were they thinking? I mean, this was a point in the offseason, and granted, I think at this point Russell Wilson had gone, Colin, yeah? He had went to Denver. So all these rumors start coming out, and I'm not sure how true they are, that Ron Rivera rang Arrowhead and genuinely asked the Chiefs how much did they take for Patrick Mahomes. Now, if that's true, now that was a report on NFL Network the same week. They have got pros. They've got a new name. They've got nice, stunning new uniforms. They look a bit similar to the old ones. I personally like the old ones. And we're talking Robert Griffin era, sort of old ones, but 10 years old now. And that's the way I like it. I'm interested to see what Dotson can do, their first round draft pick. Jonathan Allen's a big plus for them. Obviously, Chase Young starting the season in IR is a massive issue for them. Montez Sweat is a plus. The major negative they have is the ownership situation. It is what it is. Anybody who supports teams, for example, the Broncos only have an owner now after years of sort of uncertainty, and that's something as a fan that I feel that I'm like, well, this is great. We can now move forward, and we actually feel more optimistic. I feel until that's actually settled or sort of rectified, they can't really move on. The pro that Washington has going for them is this: they're in the NFC East. That's the pro, and they go on a run. Carson Wentz could have a few decent games where maybe he has 3 passing touchdowns, maybe he has 1 interception in that game, but their running game, the combination of maybe having Curtis Samuel and Scary Terry there, and it works for them. I mean, that's potential. Their defense was decimated with injuries last season. They have to find a way to remain consistent in terms of their fitness and not get injured throughout the season. And we'll see what happens. But I'm not that... I mean, they're not going to be in Arizona in February unless they're over with us for the crack.
I think Tyler Heineke might be playing a lot sooner than we think, and I don't put it down to poor performances by Wentz. What we've seen in the past few years when he plays against a struggling offensive line, he gets injured, and even this offensive line has 3 new players coming in. So again, straight away, it's a bit in flux, and he didn't get injured last year, but you could argue that the Colts had one of the best offensive lines in the league, and they were able to protect him until that came in week 18 when they couldn't protect him anymore, and he got completely hogwashed by that Jags defensive pass rush. So I'm concerned about his stats because he's so injury prone. It wouldn't surprise me come week 4 or week 5 if he's out and they're having to go back to the all-reliable Tyler Heineke, who just won't get that opportunity to be the number 1 there. So interesting to see how it goes.
And Mark, if I've literally forgot his word. If Carson Wentz was to maybe rediscover the form he had in Philly at certain points, it's a big if. I'm just saying.
Pigs can fly.
Disclaimer, are we asterisks?
No. I mean, we will be selling tickets on Swine Air, I think, if that occurs. Pigs flying, if that occurred. I really doubt that. I actually think it's more likely, and I'm still a bit surprised they haven't really given Heineke a proper run at being the number 1 there. Obviously, he's flashed at various times, but trading for Wentz and kind of relegating him, I don't know. There's obviously something they don't see in his game that believes that he can take it to the next level of being the starter. But I fully expect to see him at some point during the season, if not due to injury, due to performance. But I'm just thinking, Michael, one thing that maybe we could start here now, even though he signed the new contract, as Colin has alluded to before, the Free the Chicago One campaign was eventually successful. Maybe in honor of Terry McLaurin, we should have Free the Washington One and get him teamed up with a more substantive team, offense, and quarterback at some point to show truly what he can do. So maybe that's our justice mission for this season. Free the Washington One.
I'll get the t-shirts printed. Give me a few weeks. Right, Giants, Colin. We had Joe Shane on during the off-season. They went 4-13 last year with Daniel Jones at the helm. Bit of change with the head coach now. Anything you want to say on the Giants?
I think the changes are positive. Aaron Schatz was on with Mina Kimes last week, and it was really, really interesting and well worth a listen. I would agree with him. I think the Giants have made a couple of good appointments, which is coming off the back of an awful decade, right? Over the last 8 years, the Giants they're now on their 5th head coach, and they're on their 3rd general manager. Again, that's Broncos-esque. And over that period, you don't want to be in that territory. I think it's a bit of a lost season for the Giants. I don't have faith in Daniel Jones, and I think Gettleman put them in an awful mess in terms of what Joe Shane could do. They've also suffered a spate of injuries. I think this is entirely around finding who you want to have going forward. And I think you're going to see the Giants take one of the top 3 QBs in next year's draft. No matter what Dable does, I think it's going to be very difficult for the Giants. They'll be competitive. They'll play hard. They'll probably have an upset or two, but over the course of the season, I think it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah, I echo those thoughts. Very similar to Colin. The Daniel Jones thing you said about he was at the helm last year. Well, he really wasn't, because he was gone by week 9 for the entirety of the season. So that's the problem. Ultimately, the previous season he got injured in Cincinnati and he missed 4 games. He can't stay fit for large parts of the season, which is another difficulty, because you're trying to do a true evaluation of the guy, and when he's not fit for a majority of the time, that doesn't really bode well for his long-term career. Never mind in New York or somewhere else if he does be passed on at the end of next season. Joe Shane has done a great job. He can argue the toss around what he's had to deal with, but he's come in with 48 million over the cap. He's essentially rebuilt the offensive line with 3 really strong players are coming in, and luckily their players have been in the league a while, but they know how to play. And we've seen it once it's on camp and once it's only pre-season, there's been a dramatic upturn in terms of the availability and the time which Daniel Jones has gotten those 2 games. I know it's sporadic because it's only a couple of drives, but it does bode well to see that type of stuff happening. They've got playmakers on offense. I mean, Tony last year, when he did play and he flashed, he looked really good, but can't stay fit. Galladay can't stay fit. Wandale Robinson, 2nd round pick. We had Colin Rogers on the show a few weeks back, who's, we put him down as a really strong draft analyst. He was raving about him, and he looked really strong in camp, and a player of great excitement. And Sterling Shepard has come back. So they have players. We look at the defense, cornerbacks as a youth concern. I mean, they're going into the season with 3 young lads, and they're going to get exposed, and they'll learn quickly, because they're going to be on the backside one-on-ones, because Wink Martindale, as we know from his time in Baltimore, likes to blitz and nothing else. And if we get exposed in the secondary, well, so be it, and that's what's going to happen. Again, they're putting all the chips in the basket that Thibodeau is going to be lightning in a bottle straight away. The 1st round pick, and Ujulari, who had 8.5 sacks last year, again, his 2nd year. So they've got some great players, and they can put it together on their day, and they can beat teams, but consistently it's not there. But this season is all about evaluating Daniel Jones. Realistically, he's not going to be there next year. For him to stay, I've said it in June, I've been saying it all summer, he has to have an MVP season, because there's 3 narratives. One, you touched on it earlier, Michael, around teams like Seattle play. Giants and Washington and the NFC East in general will say, we play Detroit, and we play Carolina, and we play Chicago, and we play Jacksonville, and we play Texans. And they'll all say the same thing, but they are winnable games. So there is a scenario where the Giants could win 7 games, still not have a proper evaluation to quarterback, and then they're left high and dry because they're way down the pecking order in the draft, can't get the quarterback they want, or do you completely, as we see with the Miami team, throw games, which doesn't really materialize in the league. So they're kind of, to me, it's in a bit of a quandary. I really don't know what's going to happen. I could see them winning games. I could see similar scenario to Washington. I think it'll be 6-7 wins potentially. But again, that won't leave us anywhere with any confidence that quarterback can stay on. And that's why maybe he'll get injured, and who knows. Then Tyrod Taylor, who has a relationship with the head coach from his time in Buffalo, could step in, and having gone through the Mike Glennon experience and other quarterbacks towards the back end of the season, essentially playing with no quarterback, that if you had Tyrod Taylor, at least, as you said, he can remain competitive and potentially pull off a couple of shocks.
There's a new movie on Disney Plus been released called Prey, and I think it's the 5th Predator film and the third or fourth reboot. In many respects, this feels like yet another New York reboot and yet another lost season to give a new team an opportunity to try to reshape the team, reshape the overall structure behind it. I actually credit what the ownership has done this season, though. However, in cleaning house, bringing in Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll as that unit, as that combined team, talked about it with Lynch and Shanahan in the 49ers, for example. I think is actually a great move to do and very consistent. Underlying question here: what if the Bills' offense actually falls off the cliff? The pressure is going to be on Ken Dorsey, who's taken over from Brian Daboll, not necessarily Josh Allen, but that's for an AFC East discussion at some point. But they've got a long road ahead. As Brian's alluded to, they're in salary cap hell. They're carrying $32 million in dead money. It's the biggest amount of dead money ever. They have to clean all that up. It feels like the reboots the Jets had to do, the Saints seem to have to do every second year on a regular basis. They have to clean that up. They have to clean the roster up, and they have to properly evaluate the talent. The biggest problem, the biggest challenge, of course, is you start with that talent at quarterback. And unfortunately, Daniel Jones, they haven't picked up your fifth-year option. That puts you in the illustrious company of Jake Locker, of EJ Manuel, of Paxton Lynch, of Christian Ponder, of Brandon Weeden, in terms of first-round quarterbacks whose fifth-year option was not picked up. Strangely to see, all of those people are out of the NFL now and are no longer plying their trade as players. That is the fundamental challenge and problem they've got to overcome. I'm actually with Brian. If it's MVP or nothing, and I think it's going to be nothing, and I think, unfortunately, the 22 wins in 5 seasons continues. But I do look forward to, because I admire his passion and his fandom, Brian O'Leary's explanation in week 8 or 9, when it's still mathematically possible for the Giants to get through, exactly how it's going to transpire over the next 4 weeks. It comes every season. It's beautiful when it happens, and I love them for it. But rebuild.
When we shock Green Bay in London. No, what I was just going to say, I think Shane and was always brought in on the basis that the second year is really the key year, because next year there's 76 million on the other side. So they flipped to having 76 million, potentially getting a quarterback from the draft. It allows you to build a team around a young quarterback immediately, and then all of a sudden you'd expect results and performances, and I suppose the future of the franchise to change.
To me, it's a wee bit like the situation in Manchester at the minute with Manchester United. A bit of a shit show. We're 38 minutes into the show, I can say that. However, I applaud bringing in Joe Sheehan and Brian Daboll or Brian Daboll?
I think it's Daboll. I probably mispronounced it. Daboll.
Yeah. He looks like Adam Rank. If Adam Rank, went to Sonic a few times. But he seems like a nice guy. There's obviously a number of negatives for the team in the sense of they lost Jabril Peppers going to New England, James Bradbury going to Philly. That was a quiet day on WhatsApp, boys, when that happened. But you've got Blake Martinez coming back from an injury. I think it's a disservice to some quarterbacks in the league even suggesting that Daniel Jones might, in his own dreams, have an MVP season. But I agree, yes, he needs to have an MVP season, caliber type season, to have any chance of staying on, obviously, in terms of the whole financial situation. I think Tyrod Taylor will be the QB1 before week 12. And I agree with Colin. I think it's a lost season for them, but that being said, the Giants are going in the right direction. This is the 5-year project. They brought in Kevin Thibodeau, the second coming. He seems to be, he was going to be the first pick, but there was obviously NIL concerns, the whole image pick, and they've got a bargain 2 picks there in the first round of the draft, so there's obviously many good times ahead. I just don't feel like bringing out a uniform to highlight the 1980s or whatever is going to cover over cracks. It looks lovely, don't get me wrong. I think they're playing it against the Bears, and Brian's right, there's a few games there that they can win. They'll probably go over 5.5 this year instead of winning 4 games. But it's going to be an interesting few years in New York, and we'll see what happens. And more power to them, because if the Giants done well, this show will be better crack. And whenever I started watching the NFL, Eli Manning won the Super Bowl with them, and we're talking about Daniel Jones here. I feel like we could have a podcast about Eli Manning and some of the ways he played over the years. Colin, who have you got winning the NFC East, my friend? Before Brian jumps in with that, go quick.
I'm looking forward to again this season, because I do remember when last year then Mark Cockrell said the 0-7 Detroit Lions would absolutely annihilate the Eagles, and the Eagles put 44 points on them. Yeah, you can go back and listen, Mark. You can go back. It was good crack. This is the Eagles, the Cowboys, and then genuinely, I think it could go either way. I see reasons why the Giants can finish third. I see reasons why Washington. I think Ron Rivera's experience and the roster there is strong enough that they should finish third. As I said, I think the Giants finish fourth. I think it looks a whole lot different this time next year, though.
Yeah, I agree on the Washington Giants situation. When they play each other come December, it'll probably be again to see who it pips the third and fourth. So I'll go Giants fourth. I think because the more experienced head coach will probably win it in the end, getting the third. Have the Cowboys second, and have the Eagles winning division. Mark also had one other great quote. Listen, let's not go down memory lane here with some fantastic quotes of Mark on the show, because we've had some great times. But I still prefer the one, Colin, when he said, if Jesus Christ is the quarterback for the New York Giants, they're still not beating the Seahawks. And they did beat the Seahawks, so you never know. Tennessee tend to start slowly, lads. They lost to the Cards at week 1 at home last year when everybody thought they were going to roast them. So maybe we'll be roasting them come Sunday, the 11th of September. Do it for 9-11, boys.
I didn't remember the annihilation comment, but it's a little bit worrying seeing as I won the picks between the four of us by some distance last year that you have to bring up some of my losses. I get it. The jealousy hurts. But I mean, look, we definitely all have picks we'd rather take back, and maybe I'm going to regret this pick, but I can't see the Giants. I can see the Giants coming with a couple of strong games, but I still see them coming at the bottom. Commanders third. And yeah, I just can't believe in Jalen Hurts. So Eagles second and Cowboys to be one and done in the playoffs yet again, preceding the Sean Payton era, which is destined to be in Dallas.
I want to give a big shout out to Daniel, who we met outside the Aviva last week. A big Giants fan. Broke his ankle, he broke his elbow.
His wrist playing rugby.
Hope you feel better.
Absolutely. Get well soon.
Yes, of course. I have got the Eagles winning the NFC East. I've got the Cowboys finishing second. I've got the Giants finishing third. And I've got Washington picking in the top 3 in the draft, finishing fourth. I think they're going to win under 3 games. No, I'm lying. They win under 4. But yeah, and I mean, look, the Giants aren't far off them. Daniel Jones will not be in the NFL next year. He will not be a backup. Or if he is a backup, he's QB3 somewhere. I think, I know there's cap hell and stuff going on. Have a bit of respect, Joe, or Mike, or whoever. Go on, put Tyrod in for the crack, please. I know there could be an injury concern there. Put him in for the crack. Okay. We need to we need to round this up, folks. That's our NFC East preview. If you want, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much if you're listening on the podcast. Please leave a 5-star review, or 4 stars if you don't agree with us. Just give us a review. It'd be great. Comment, whatever. YouTube, like, share, subscribe. We're going to be putting out a load of stuff on YouTube all season. Massively appreciate your time, your support for watching it on that platform. Big thanks to Cassidy Travel. Big thanks to the hombres here, Colin, Brian, Mark. That's our NFC East preview done. You can get the rest on YouTube, all 8 divisions, as we get even closer to the 2022 NFL season. Cheers.